Mrs. Wallace, I'm Detective Don Tummins. I have something important to speak to you about. Might I come in for a few minutes?
Why, yes, Detective. Please come in. I was making some coffee. Can I get you a cup?
That would be swell, Mrs. Wallace. And might I suggest you pour yourself a cup, too? I have something rather important to speak with you about.
Is this about the package thief? I sure hope you caught that man. I swear it's the influx of homosexuals moving in. I just can't order anything from Nordstrom without it up and disappearing.
Okay, no, Mrs. Wallace, this is not about any packages. This is about your husband. May I confirm that you are indeed the wife of Mr. James Montgomery Wallace, correct?
Why, yes, Detective, that's me. Oh my, I told James not to be in the office after hours. He'll be home in a minute. Perhaps it's best if...
Damn it, Mrs. Wallace! Your husband isn't coming home. I'm sorry for my impatience, but you are becoming hysterical. Mrs. Wallace, I'm sorry to tell you that today we found Mr. Wallace dead behind the old flower factory.
No. Not my Jamesy. It can't be.
Mrs. Wallace, would Mr. Wallace have any reason to take his own life?
Why, heavens, no. No. You're not suggesting...
Mrs. Wallace, we found a note with the body. We paid a visit to his place of business and discovered some checks and matched the handwriting. And I'm sorry to tell you that I may be forced in ruling this a suicide. Rest assured, Mrs. Wallace, I will take every step to ensure that no foul play was involved.
It just doesn't make any sense, Detective. Why would he have done it, Detective? Why? You said there was a note. What did it say?
Well, Mrs. Wallace, I'm afraid our crime scene investigators still have that note. But I can tell you that Mr. Wallace mentioned being behind on his taxes and some other bills. Tell me, Mrs. Wallace, have you noticed any money troubles around here?
Oh, no. Well, maybe on occasion. Every Tuesday we had a pot roast simmering all day, and... Oh, most recently there was the flowers.
The flowers?
Well, my James would bring me the freshest and most beautiful smiling flowers every Friday, but, most recently he hasn't been bringing any home. I dare not ask why, but he brought it up to me. He said that the florist that he usually gets them from just have too shabby of a flower lately, and I deserve the most beautiful and most glamorous flowers that they have. That James always knows what to say. Can I get you any more coffee, Detective?
I'm fine, thank you. I can see by the impeccable state of your home that you've earned those flowers, Mrs. Wallace.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. But you know what they say. A happy home is a happy marriage.
Mrs. Wallace, I'm curious still about the money troubles your husband mentioned in the note. Are there any business associates that may be at odds with Mr. Wallace?
At odds with James? Never. He treated his friends as well as he treated his wife. There was Charlie. Why, James gave Charlie his first job. Charlie looked up to him like a father. He could never be mad at my Jamesy. Then Arthur. Now, Arthur, he's an interesting fellow. He stopped in one night with James. I still recall he drank a Seagram's at 7 with cola. I was cleaning the kitchen when I heard them bicker about something to do with some building that had been planned over on 14th. They planned to redo the entire neighborhood, Oh, James and his aspirations.
Mr. Wallace was a rather large man, wasn't he? Was he ever insecure about his weight? Was he ever ridiculed, picked on by anybody that you know of?
Oh, not that he'd ever tell me. I suppose he was heavy, but I didn't see my Jamesy that way. When I met him, he was a striking young man. We met at the beach, and He just looked divine in his trunks. I still see him in the same light as I did that sunny day in Bethany.
And you two never had any children of your own, did you?
No, not of our own. We wanted to in the beginning, but weren't able. And I suppose James just got so busy with his projects, and as we began to grow older, we just stopped talking about it altogether.
This picture of these children, you were a teacher?
That's right. For nearly 10 years before James decided he'd rather no wife of his be stuck working. So I left. But I still help teach the young anytime that I can, guiding them on their way to a bright future. Quite a few right here in this building consistently seek advice from me. They lack the proper guidance from their own parents, so I'm here to help.
Yes, I think I've met one of the boys you helped downstairs. Interesting fellow. Being a teacher is hard work, Mrs. Wallace. Surely you've come across your share of trickery and deceit, much like I have in my career.
Oh yes, plenty of those. Goodness, I got so good at deciphering each student's handwriting. One would turn in their homework obviously written by another student. I started writing them back notes in their own handwriting. It took them a while to catch on, but boy, once they did. Detective Tummins, would you like a piece of my warm buttermilk and cherry pie? It's been cooling in the windowsill since before you got here.
That would be just fine, Mrs. Wallace.
Oh, who could that be at this hour? It's nearly dinner time. Hello? Why, yes. He's right here. It's for you. They must have known you'd be here.
Yes, I came straight here from where we found Mr. Wallace's body. Hello? Yes. Uh-huh. Very well. Thank you. I'll take that pie now, Mrs. Wallace.
Sure.
Everything's fine, Mrs. Wallace. My team has concluded that there was indeed foul play involved in your husband's, well, murder. Why'd you do it, Mrs. Wallace?
What? What, Detective? What are you saying?
Cut the charade, Mrs. Wallace. I could smell the resentments from the moment I walked into this godforsaken home. Now tell me, why'd you do it?
He hurt me.
Don't start with the nonsense. We asked around. Everyone said that Mr. Wallace was the kindest man, a real jolly fellow. It's that boy downstairs, isn't it? You had an affair on Mr. Wallace. You told him to say all those nice things about you to paint a rosy picture that wasn't even true. Concerned that homosexuals were pilfering your packages? No, you were afraid that that teenage plaything was gonna leave you for another man. And you'd be back right where you started, cheating on the man that gave up everything for you. You wrote that note.
Fine! I did it! And I would do it again. That James! Everything I told you was true in the beginning. But I wanted kids. He didn't. He gained so much weight. He just never noticed me anymore. I just couldn't be the glamorous, beautiful housewife that he needed. I just got so angry. And I couldn't take it anymore, Detective. So I killed him! And I would do it again!
It's a shame, Mrs. Wallace. Somebody as beautiful and glamorous as you. You could have had it all. Perhaps you should have let him commit you. It'd sure be a hell of a lot better than where I'm about to have you sent.
You know, Detective, there is another way we could work this out.
Why don't you try charming the judge like that?
Mrs. Wallace, where are they taking you?
Young buck, I don't know how you're involved with this, but I'll be back for you.